My name is Sophia Morgan, and I'm 34 years old. I built my physical therapy clinic from nothing but a dream and determination. Every nail hammered, every patient helped, every sleepless night worrying about bills, that was all me. Now that success has finally arrived, suddenly my family wants executive positions and profit shares. The same family who laughed at my vision and refused to help when I was sleeping on a cot in my clinic's back room. Before I tell you how my own family tried to take advantage of everything I've worked for, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey of standing up for myself. I always knew I wanted to help people heal. Even as a little girl, I was the one bandaging neighborhood kids' scraped knees and offering comfort. My parents, Robert and Linda Morgan, never took my healthcare aspirations seriously. "It's just a phase," my mother would say with a dismissive wave whenever I mentioned wanting to be a doctor or therapist. "You'll grow out of it and find something practical." My father was more direct. "Healthcare is a service industry. Morgans are leaders, not servants," he'd lecture during dinner. This was especially true when comparing me to my siblings. My brother James was the golden child with his business degree and startup ambitions. My sister Rebecca, 2 years younger than me, followed his path into marketing and was praised for her practical mind. The only person who believed in me was my grandfather. He'd been a medic in Vietnam and understood the calling to heal. "You have healing hands, Sophie," he'd tell me, using the nickname only he was allowed. "Don't let anyone tell you that's not valuable." When I was 16, he gave me a vintage doctor's bag he'd found at an antique store. I still keep it in my office as a reminder of his faith in me. College was a struggle. While my siblings had their tuition fully covered by our parents, I cobbled together scholarships, loans, and worked 2 part-time jobs. Weekends when James and Rebecca came home to family dinners, I was serving tables at a local restaurant or working the night shift at a care facility. I'd drag myself to morning classes after 4 hours of sleep, fueled by cheap coffee and determination. My first job after graduation was at Memorial Hospital's Rehabilitation Center. The work was rewarding, but the environment was cold and assembly line-like. Patients were numbers, therapy was standardized, and personal connections were discouraged as inefficient. I watched people not getting the individualized care they needed, their unique circumstances ignored in favor of standardized protocols. One night, after a particularly frustrating day where I'd been reprimanded for spending too much time with an elderly stroke patient, I stayed up sketching my vision for a different kind of clinic. One where care was personalized, where therapists had time to truly understand each patient's life and needs, where healing was about the whole person, not just the injured body part. The next family dinner, I excitedly shared my vision. "I'm thinking of starting my own physical therapy practice," I announced as we passed the mashed potatoes. My father snorted. "With what money? You can barely pay your rent." "I've been saving," I defended, though the amount was admittedly small. My mother patted my hand. "Honey, running a business isn't like playing doctor. There's accounting, management, marketing, things you know nothing about." James laughed. "Leave the entrepreneurship to the business majors, sis. You're good at following instructions, stick with that." Rebecca nodded in agreement. "Do you even know how to write a business plan?" I went home that night and cleared a corner of my tiny apartment. I pinned my sketches to the wall, bought business books from the second-hand store, and started learning everything I could about small business management. Every night after my shift at the hospital, I'd come home and work on my clinic plan until I fell asleep at my desk. 6 months later, I walked into 3 different banks with my business plan. The first 2 loan officers barely glanced at my carefully prepared documents before rejecting me. "Too risky," they said. "No business experience," they said. "No collateral," they said. The third bank was my last hope. The loan officer, an older woman named Mrs. Daniels, actually took the time to read through my plan. "Your financials are solid," she admitted, "but your lack of business experience is concerning." I leaned forward. "I've been running the rehabilitation schedule for our department for the past year. I managed to cut wait times by 20% while improving patient satisfaction scores. I may not have a business degree, but I understand efficiency and client service. She studied me for a long moment. The interest rate will be high. I understand. And we'll need some form of collateral. I swallowed hard. I have my car. It's paid off. And I have some savings bonds from my grandfather. When I walked out with conditional approval for my loan, I called my grandfather first. My parents and siblings didn't even know I had the meeting. What was the point? They'd only tell me all the ways I would fail. The interest rate on my loan was punishing, 12.5%. But it was my only option without family support, and I was determined to make it work. The commercial space I found was in an older building on the edge of town. The rent was affordable because, frankly, the place was a disaster. Water stains marked the ceiling tiles, the carpet smelled of mildew, and one of the front windows was cracked. "You can't be serious," my friend Tara said when I showed her the space. "This place is a tetanus shot waiting to happen." "It has potential," I insisted, pointing to the large windows that would let in natural light once cleaned, the spacious rooms that could be converted to treatment areas, and the small back office that could serve as both reception and my personal workspace. The landlord gave me 2 months of reduced rent to renovate before opening. With my limited budget, hiring contractors was out of the question. YouTube became my best friend as I learned how to install flooring, patch drywall, and paint. My hands, once only trained for gentle therapeutic manipulation, became calloused from sanders and hammers. A few friends helped when they could. Tara came by after her nursing shifts to help paint. My college roommate Amy spent a weekend helping me install the laminate flooring in the reception area. But most evenings, it was just me, working until midnight, then unrolling a sleeping bag on the freshly installed floor because I had given up my apartment to save money. I showered at the gym next door where I'd negotiated a reduced membership fee in exchange for providing free posture assessments for their trainers. The waiting room furniture came from thrift stores and estate sales. I reupholstered an old sofa myself using fabric on clearance, following online tutorials with meticulous care. The treatment tables were my biggest expense. I refused to compromise on equipment that would directly impact patient care. But for everything else, I found ways to save. My desk was a solid door laid across 2 filing cabinets. My business cards were designed and printed at the local copy shop where I traded physical therapy sessions for the owner's chronic back pain in lieu of payment. Creating a website was another challenge. I couldn't afford a professional web designer, so I taught myself basic HTML and built a simple site. My logo was designed by an art student who I helped recover from a wrist injury, another trade of services. My marketing strategy consisted of personally visiting doctors' offices with homemade muffins and my credentials, asking for referrals. Through all of this, my family remained conspicuously absent. James visited once, looked around with a smirk, and said, "Cute hobby, sophomore. Let me know when you're ready for a real job again." Rebecca stopped by only to drop off a small plant, to brighten up this sad little place, before rushing off to her lunch date. My parents didn't visit at all, too busy attending James's business networking events and Rebecca's marketing award ceremonies. Megan Bailey became my first employee, a part-time receptionist and assistant who believed in my vision enough to accept a modest salary with the promise of growth. She was a single mother returning to the workforce, and we made a deal where she could bring her son to work after school if needed. He would do his homework in our break room, which was really just a corner with a microwave and mini fridge. Opening day arrived with exactly 3 appointments scheduled. My first patient was an elderly man with arthritis who had been dismissed by his previous physical therapist as just getting old. The second was a teenager recovering from a sports injury who couldn't afford the specialist his coach recommended. The third was a pregnant woman experiencing severe back pain who had been told to just deal with it until the baby comes. I treated each one with the personalized care that had been my founding vision. I spent extra time understanding their daily activities, their goals, their frustrations. I designed exercises specific to their lives. helping the elderly man strengthen his hands specifically for his woodworking hobby, creating a training regimen for the teen that would complement his basketball drills, showing the pregnant woman positions and stretches that gave her immediate relief. That first month, I barely made enough to cover the interest on my loan. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, working 12-hour days and handling everything from therapy to cleaning the bathrooms. When the air conditioning broke during a heat wave, I couldn't afford repairs, so I bought 3 box fans and apologized profusely to my sweating patients, who loyally returned despite the discomfort. "You're the only one who's actually helped me," the elderly man said, waving away my apologies about the heat. "I can finally hold my chisel again without dropping it." Those words kept me going through the lean months that followed. That, and the growing collection of thank you cards I pinned to the wall behind my desk. My real measure of success. The first year was a constant battle for survival. Every month was a nail-biter as I checked my accounts to see if I could make rent, pay Megan's salary, and keep the lights on. I developed a sixth sense for which bills could be delayed another week and which had to be paid immediately. My credit score plummeted, but my clinic door stayed open. The turning point came 18 months in, when the star quarterback from the local high school tore his ACL during a crucial game. His parents had been told by specialists that his athletic career was likely over. They came to me as a last resort, unable to afford the sports medicine clinic in the city. I developed a specialized rehabilitation program for him, incorporating elements from the latest research I studied at night and therapeutic techniques I'd been experimenting with. I spent extra hours before and after regular appointments working with him, tracking his progress meticulously, and adapting his treatment plan as his body responded. 6 months later, he started in the state championship game and led his team to victory. The local newspaper ran a story about his miracle comeback and mentioned my clinic. The reporter, Amanda Fisher, became curious about the small practice that had succeeded where specialists had failed. She came in for an interview, planning a short human interest piece. Instead, she found a story about determination that resonated with the community. Her feature article, "Healing Hands: How One Woman's Vision Changed Physical Therapy in Our Town," ran on the front page of the Sunday edition. My phone started ringing Monday morning and didn't stop. By the end of my 3rd year, I had hired 2 additional therapists, Daniel Rivera, who specialized in sports injuries, and Allison Chen, who brought expertise in geriatric care. My patient list had grown from 3 that first day to over 200 active clients. The waiting list for new patients stretched to 3 weeks. I reinvested every penny of profit back into the clinic. We upgraded equipment, expanded our treatment options, and finally fixed that broken air conditioner. I developed specialized programs for different patient populations: athletic injury prevention for the local schools, fall prevention for seniors, ergonomic assessments for office workers. The local business association awarded me Entrepreneur of the Year in my 4th year of operation. The plaque hung next to my grandfather's doctor bag, a testament to how far I'd come. That same year, I finally took my first vacation, a weekend trip to a nearby lake where I slept for 12 hours straight the first night, my body finally releasing years of accumulated tension. Financial stability arrived incrementally. First, I was able to pay myself a modest but regular salary. Then, I refinanced my high-interest loan to something more manageable. Finally, in year 5, I was able to approach the building's owner about purchasing the property instead of renting. The day I signed those mortgage papers was surreal. I now owned the building that I had once painted myself, where I had once slept on the floor because I couldn't afford both rent and an apartment. I celebrated by replacing the cracked window that I'd carefully covered with reinforced tape for all those years. With ownership secured, I invested in a major renovation. The waiting room became a warm, welcoming space with comfortable furniture and natural light. We expanded into the vacant unit next door, adding 3 more treatment rooms and a proper rehabilitation gym. The back office where I'd once slept became a staff break room with actual comfortable furniture and a full-sized refrigerator. "You've created something special here," Daniel told me as we stood in the newly renovated space the night before our grand reopening. "Most clinics feel like hospitals. This feels like a place where healing actually happens. It wasn't just the physical space that set us apart. We had developed a reputation for care that went beyond standard protocols. Our therapists were encouraged to spend extra time with patients when needed. We offered sliding scale payments for those without adequate insurance. We remembered patients' birthdays, their grandchildren's names, their personal goals beyond just physical recovery. Our innovative approach attracted attention from healthcare professionals across the state. I was invited to speak at a regional conference about patient-centered care models. The local community college asked me to guest lecture for their physical therapy assistant program. Other clinic owners began to visit, hoping to understand how we maintained both quality care and financial viability. Through all of this growth and recognition, my family remained noticeably absent. My parents attended neither the business award ceremony nor the clinic's 5-year anniversary celebration. James and Rebecca occasionally asked vague questions about how the little therapy place is going during the rare family gatherings I attended, but their eyes glazed over when I tried to share my excitement about new treatment methodologies or patient success stories. My grandfather remained my most loyal supporter until his passing in my 4th year of business. I closed the clinic for a day to attend his funeral, the only time we hadn't been open during regular hours since our launch. My patients sent a massive flower arrangement with a card signed by over 100 people whose lives he had indirectly touched through his support of me. #5. Family sudden interest. The first sign of my family's changing attitude came 6 years after opening day. My mother called on a Tuesday evening, catching me as I finished paperwork after hours. "Sophia, darling. We saw that lovely article about you in the Business Chronicle." Her voice had a warmth I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "Thanks, Mom." I was genuinely surprised she'd seen it. The feature had focused on healthcare entrepreneurs who were changing traditional models of care delivery. "We're having a family dinner this Saturday. You simply must come. It's been too long, and we want to hear all about your clinic." She said the word as though she was still getting used to taking it seriously. I hesitated. Family dinners had always been showcases for James and Rebecca's accomplishments, with my contributions barely acknowledged. "Please, darling. Your father insists." That was even more surprising. My father insisting on my presence was unprecedented. The dinner was surreal. My parents' house looked the same, the formal dining room with its heavy mahogany table, the china cabinet displaying my mother's prized collection, the family photos dominated by James's and Rebecca's achievements. But the atmosphere had shifted. "There she is." My father actually stood when I entered, something he'd only ever done for important business associates. "Our healthcare entrepreneur." Throughout dinner, they asked questions about the clinic, how many staff I had, what services we offered, how patient bookings worked. They seemed particularly interested in the financial aspects, revenue streams, insurance reimbursement rates, profit margins. I answered cautiously and used to being the center of attention at these gatherings. It wasn't until dessert that the reason for their interest became clear. "So, James has some news," my mother said, serving slices of her signature cheesecake. My brother cleared his throat. "The startup I was with has folded. Venture capital dried up." He shrugged as if it were a minor inconvenience rather than his third failed business venture in 5 years. "Such a shame," my father added. "The market just wasn't ready for their innovative approach." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely, despite the years of his condescension about my little therapy place. "Actually," James continued, studying his dessert with sudden interest, "I've been thinking about my next move. Healthcare is quite the growing sector, isn't it?" Before I could respond, my sister jumped in. "And speaking of changes, Michael and I are going through a bit of a rough patch." Michael was her husband, a financial advisor whose risky investment strategies I'd always found concerning. "His firm is downsizing, and we may need to tighten our belts for a while." My mother reached over to pat Rebecca's hand sympathetically before turning to me with a bright smile. "But enough about these little setbacks. Sophia, your father and I were just saying how wonderful it would be to turn your clinic into a true family business. I nearly choked on my cheesecake. A family business? Of course. My father boomed. Morgan Family Physical Therapy has such a nice ring to it. James has excellent management experience that could take operational oversight off your hands. And I could revamp your entire marketing strategy, Rebecca added. Your website is functional but hardly cutting edge. I could increase your visibility tenfold. I've always said healthcare needs more business acumen, my father continued as if my stunned silence was agreement. Too many practitioners don't understand the financial side of things. The conversation continued around me, my family carving up my years of hard work as if it were just another slice of cheesecake to be divided. They discussed salary expectations, title preferences, and profit-sharing percentages without once acknowledging that I had built everything from nothing, or that none of them had contributed a single dollar or hour to its creation. The following week brought a barrage of unexpected family interest. James showed up at the clinic unannounced during our busiest afternoon. Just thought I'd see the operation in action, he explained loudly in the waiting room full of patients. He proceeded to walk through the treatment areas, interrupting sessions to ask therapists about their productivity metrics and commenting on inefficient space utilization. I pulled him into my office. James, you can't just wander in and disrupt treatments. He waved dismissively. This is exactly the problem with healthcare practitioners running businesses. You're too focused on the care side and not enough on operational efficiency. For instance, why do you have only one patient per therapist at a time? You could easily double book them. Because we provide personalized, focused care. That's our entire model. He shook his head. Unsustainable in today's market. Don't worry, once I come on board as COO, we'll streamline everything. The next day, Rebecca called to suggest a family meeting about the clinic's future. We should discuss our vision for Morgan Family Therapy, she said. I've already started sketching logo concepts. Rebecca, I haven't agreed to any changes, I reminded her. Don't be so resistant to growth, Sophia. This is what successful businesses do, they expand with the right talent. And blood is thicker than water, after all. The family meeting was scheduled at my parents' house for the following Sunday. I spent the intervening days in a fog of confusion and hurt. After years of dismissing my dream, after offering no support during my struggling early days, my family now wanted to claim ownership of my success. Text messages arrived daily. My father sent articles about family business structures. My mother forwarded information about tax benefits of employing relatives. James sent unsolicited efficiency improvement plans that would have completely undermined our care philosophy. Rebecca created a new logo and business cards with Morgan Family Therapy prominently displayed and her contact information listed as marketing director. I barely slept, torn between lifelong conditioning to seek my family's approval and the growing certainty that their proposal was deeply unfair. The night before the meeting, I called Megan, who had been with me since day one. They're trying to take over everything I've built, I explained, voice breaking. Then don't let them, she said simply. Sophia, you created this clinic when everyone, including your family, said you would fail. It's successful because of your vision and hard work, not despite it. You don't owe them positions they haven't earned. Her words crystallized the unease I'd been feeling. This wasn't about family support, it was about family entitlement. #6. The confrontation. My parents' dining room had been transformed into a makeshift boardroom. My father sat at the head of the table, surrounded by printouts, folders, and a laptop open to a PowerPoint presentation titled Morgan Family Therapy, Strategic Growth Initiative. James wore a suit I recognized from his business school graduation. Rebecca had her hair pulled back in a severe bun that she probably thought made her look more corporate. My mother fluttered around serving coffee in her best china while my father checked his watch impatiently. Finally, he said when I entered. Let's get started. Without preamble, James launched into his presentation. Slides detailed a complete restructuring of my clinic, with himself installed as CEO, Rebecca as marketing director, and my parents as board advisors with significant profit percentages. My role was labeled clinical director, essentially demoting me to an employee in my own business. As you can see, James explained, pointing to a particularly confusing flow chart, this hierarchical structure optimizes decision-making pathways while leveraging core competencies across the Morgan portfolio of skills. We'll need to rename, of course, Rebecca interjected. I've mocked up some options. She slid a folder toward me containing designs for Morgan Health Enterprises and Morgan Wellness Group, none of which bore any resemblance to the warm, patient-centered brand I'd carefully built. The current name lacks market penetration potential, she explained, as if teaching a child. We need something that scales regionally. My father nodded approvingly. James has already reached out to commercial real estate contacts about additional locations. And I've drafted employment contracts for your current staff, James added. Some restructuring will be necessary, of course. That receptionist. Megan, I supplied. Her name is Megan. Right. Her salary is above market rate for her position. We'll need to adjust that. She's been with me since day one, I said quietly. She's the heart of our front office. Rebecca waved dismissively. Sentimentality is the enemy of good business, Sophia. We'll need to make several such adjustments to improve the bottom line. Which reminds me, my father interjected, we'll need full access to your financial records. James has prepared a list of documents required for the transition. Transition? I repeated, finding my voice at last. I haven't agreed to any of this. There was an awkward pause before my mother laughed nervously. Darling, this is just formality. We're family. Of course, we're all going to work together. We're bringing substantial expertise to the table, James said, frowning. I've managed teams of up to 15 people. At 3 failed startups, I pointed out. His face reddened. Market timing issues. Besides, I've got an MBA. What business credentials do you have? A successful clinic that I built from nothing, I replied, my voice gaining strength. 6 years of profitability, a waiting list of patients, and staff who love their jobs. Yes, my father interrupted impatiently. No one's denying you made a nice little therapy office. But to grow it into something substantial, you need business acumen. Morgan acumen. The same acumen that told you my dream wasn't worth supporting? I asked. The same expertise that led all of you to laugh at my plans? Now, Sophia, my mother soothed, don't be dramatic. We're trying to help you. Help me? The words triggered a flash of memory, sleeping on the clinic floor, eating ramen for weeks, working 14-hour days while battling bronchitis because I couldn't afford to close for even a day. Where was this help when I was painting the clinic walls myself? Or when I couldn't afford both rent and food in the same month? That was different, Rebecca said dismissively. It wasn't a proven concept then. Exactly. I stood up, surprising even myself with the sudden movement. You weren't willing to take a risk then. You didn't believe in me or my vision. Not one of you offered to help when I was struggling, not with money, not with time, not even with encouragement. Sit down, Sophia, my father commanded. This emotional display is exactly why you need proper business leadership. But years of suppressed frustration had broken through. No, Dad. I won't sit down. I built something valuable without any of you. I worked myself to exhaustion while you were all attending James's networking events and Rebecca's marketing galas. I created a successful healthcare model that puts patients first while still turning a profit. And now that it's successful, you want to waltz in and take over? We're family, my mother repeated, as if this explained everything. Family supports each other, I countered. Family believes in each other's dreams. Family doesn't show up only when there's money to be made. James slammed his hand on the table. This ungrateful attitude is exactly your problem, Sophia. You've always thought you were special, different from the rest of us Morgans. We're offering you legitimacy here. Legitimacy? I laughed incredulously. My clinic is respected throughout the region. I speak at healthcare conferences. My patient satisfaction scores are in the top percentile nationally. I don't need your version of legitimacy. This is business, my father stated coldly. Not a therapy session. We're offering you experienced leadership. No, I interrupted, gathering my purse. You're offering to take over something you had no hand in building. The answer is no. As I turned to leave, Rebecca called after me. Don't be foolish, Sophia. You know you can't manage growth without us. I paused at the door. Watch me. The aftermath was immediate and intense. James called repeatedly, leaving increasingly threatening voicemails about family obligations and missed opportunities. My mother sent guilt-laden texts about how I was breaking her heart and tearing the family apart. My father's approach was more direct, a stern email outlining how my emotional immaturity would lead to business failure without proper guidance. Your little success has clearly gone to your head, he wrote. Remember who you are and where you come from. Morgans stick together, and Morgans don't make enemies of family. It was the thinly veiled thread in that last line that finally crystallized my decision. This wasn't about family at all, it was about control and entitlement. And for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself over their approval. The Monday after the disastrous family meeting, I called an emergency appointment with Louise Baxter, the business attorney who had helped me with my building purchase. I explained the situation while she took careful notes, her expression growing increasingly concerned. Unfortunately, this isn't uncommon with successful small businesses, she said when I finished. Family members often feel entitled to share in success they didn't help create. Let's make sure your business is legally protected. We spent 2 hours reviewing my business structure, ownership documents, and operating agreements. Louise recommended several immediate changes to fortify the legal boundaries around my clinic. You're the sole owner, which is good, she explained. But let's create an operating agreement that explicitly limits who can become an owner or officer. And let's document your family members' lack of involvement to date, in case there are future claims about verbal agreements or implied partnerships. Next, I met with Marcus Chen, a business mentor I'd connected with through the local Chamber of Commerce. Unlike my family, Marcus had checked in regularly during my early struggling years, offering practical advice and encouragement. You're right to protect what you've built, he assured me after hearing about the situation. Success attracts opportunists, even when those opportunists are family. Sometimes especially when they're family. That afternoon, I called a staff meeting after our last patient left. The 8 people gathered in our break room, 3 physical therapists, 2 assistants, Megan and our second receptionist, and our billing specialist, represented the true heart of what I'd built. I need to be transparent about something, I began, explaining the situation with my family without bitterness or anger, simply stating facts. I want you all to know that I have no intention of changing our clinic's direction, ownership, or staffing. But you should be aware that my family members might attempt to contact you or visit the clinic. Daniel, who had been with me for over 3 years, spoke first. We've all seen what you built here, Sophia. This isn't just a job for any of us, it's a mission we believe in. Megan nodded firmly. Your brother already tried to pump me for information about our finances last week. I told him I was too busy taking care of patients to chat. Her usually gentle expression hardened. No one is going to push their way in here and change what we've built. Their support moved me deeply, but I knew my family wouldn't give up easily. The next morning, I implemented security measures that Louise had recommended. The clinic door, which had always been open during business hours, now required visitors to be buzzed in. Staff received clear instructions about who was authorized to access different areas of the clinic and what information could be shared. These precautions proved necessary sooner than expected. 2 days later, James appeared in the waiting room, wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase as if he already worked there. I need to see the patient scheduling system, he announced to Megan. I'm conducting an operational assessment. Megan smiled pleasantly. Do you have an appointment? I don't need an appointment. I'm James Morgan. I'm afraid Dr. Morgan is with a patient right now. Would you like to schedule a consultation? His face reddened. Not with my sister, with your scheduling software. I'm going to be taking over operational management here. By this time, I had been alerted by our new silent signal system and emerged from a treatment room. James, you need to leave. You're disturbing our patients. This is ridiculous, Sophia. We're family. You can't shut me out of a family business. This isn't a family business. It's my business. Please leave, or I'll have to ask Megan to call security. The confrontation grew heated enough that Daniel stepped in, his imposing 6'4" frame effectively blocking James from moving further into the clinic. Sir, I need to ask you to lower your voice. We have patients recovering from trauma who are triggered by shouting. James eventually left, but not before loudly proclaiming that I would regret this stubborn foolishness and that he was only trying to help. The incident left patients staring and staff uncomfortable, but it also solidified my resolve. The next escalation came from an unexpected direction. My parents began bringing distant relatives and family friends to tour the clinic, arriving without appointments and expecting special treatment. Your cousin Marvin is very interested in physical therapy, my mother explained sweetly during one such ambush visit, as if we hadn't had a major falling out 2 weeks prior. We thought you could show him around. Perhaps discuss future employment opportunities? Marvin, whom I had met perhaps twice at family reunions, smiled awkwardly. I later learned he had recently been fired from his accounting job for ethical violations. More concerning were the rumors that began circulating among the local business community. A colleague from another healthcare practice mentioned hearing that my clinic was undergoing a management restructuring due to compliance issues. Another mentioned that someone had inquired about whether my credentials and licensing were in good standing. The source became clear when Rebecca's husband Michael approached one of my staff therapists at a gym they both frequented. I hear Sophia's having some business trouble, he said casually. Such a shame. If she'd only accepted her family's help, things might be different. Through it all, I maintained professionalism and focus on our patients. Each attempt at undermining me only strengthened my conviction that I had made the right choice in refusing my family's help. Support came from unexpected places. Patients who had witnessed James's outburst brought homemade cookies and supportive cards. The local business association president called to check if I needed any resources after hearing concerning rumors that she correctly suspected were unfounded. Even my college roommate Amy, who had helped paint the clinic years ago and since moved to another state, sent a care package with a note saying, "Stay strong. What you've built matters." After consulting with Louise, I had a formal cease and desist letter sent to each family member, explicitly prohibiting them from representing themselves as affiliated with my clinic, discussing my business with my staff or patients, or spreading defamatory information. The final confrontation came a month after the family meeting. My parents, James, and Rebecca arrived together at the clinic 15 minutes before closing time. They bypassed Megan and walked directly toward my office, where I was finishing paperwork. "This has gone on long enough," my father announced, his authoritative voice carrying through the clinic. "We're here to resolve this situation like adults." I remained seated at my desk. "There's nothing to resolve. I've made my decision clear." James stepped forward, dropping a thick folder on my desk. "We've prepared a formal business proposal. You'll see the benefits we're offering are more than generous." I didn't touch the folder. "I'm not interested." Rebecca made an exasperated sound. "This stubbornness is so unprofessional, Sophia. We're trying to elevate your little clinic into something significant." "It already is significant," I replied calmly. "To our patients, our staff, and our community." "Enough of this nonsense," my father declared. "We're family. Morgan Family Physical Therapy will happen, with or without your cooperation. Blood is thicker than water." "Actually," I said, standing at last, The full saying is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the bonds we choose are stronger than those we're born into. And I choose my patients and my staff, people who believed in this vision when you all laughed at it. My father's face darkened dangerously. You ungrateful. He was interrupted by Daniel and our security guard Tom appearing at my office door. Several patients in the waiting room were watching the scene unfold with concern. Is everything okay, Dr. Morgan? Tom asked, though his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. No, I said firmly. My family was just bleeding. And if they return without appointments, they are not to be admitted. The ensuing scene was uncomfortable for everyone as my family was escorted out, my mother in tears, my father rigid with anger, James and Rebecca shooting venomous glares at me over their shoulders. Patients watched wide-eyed as the Morgan family drama played out in public. Once they were gone, I addressed the waiting room. I apologize for that disruption. Family business disagreements should never affect patient care. Please know that Morgan Physical Therapy remains committed to providing you with the highest quality treatment in a peaceful, healing environment. An elderly patient who had been with me since my first year spoke up. Don't you worry, Dr. Morgan. We all have family troubles. But not all of us have the spine to stand up to them. Good for you. Her words, and the murmurs of agreement from other patients, provided unexpected validation. I had spent my entire life seeking my family's approval. Now, for the first time, I had chosen my own path completely, and found support from the community I had built around me. The weeks following the public confrontation were some of the most difficult of my life. I had effectively cut ties with my entire immediate family, a painful reality even when those relationships were toxic. At night, alone in my apartment, I cycled through doubt, guilt, and grief. Had I been too harsh? Was I overreacting? Was I throwing away family bonds over business disagreements? These questions led me to seek therapy for myself. Dr. Elaine Washington, a psychologist specializing in family dynamics, helped me untangle the complex emotions. What you're experiencing is normal, she assured me during our sessions. Even when setting boundaries is healthy, it still hurts. You're grieving the family relationship you wished you had, not necessarily the one that actually existed. Over time, I came to understand that my family's behavior reflected patterns established long ago. My success had threatened their narrative about me and my place in the family hierarchy. Their attempt to take over my clinic wasn't about business at all, it was about restoring the dynamic where they were in control and I was seeking approval. The healthiest thing you did, Dr. Washington told me, was recognizing your own worth independent of their validation. Meanwhile, the clinic continued to thrive. Free from the shadow of my family's attempted takeover, I focused on expanding our services in ways aligned with our core mission. We launched a community outreach program providing free mobility assessments for seniors. We established a scholarship fund for physical therapy students committed to working in underserved communities. We pioneered innovative treatment protocols that drew patients from neighboring states. 6 months after the confrontation, I made the decision to open a second location. The expansion was carefully planned and executed on my terms, maintaining our patient-centered approach while creating new opportunities for my dedicated staff. Daniel became the lead therapist at the original clinic while I split my time between locations. Megan was promoted to office manager with a well-deserved raise and profit-sharing arrangement. The day we cut the ribbon on the new clinic, I felt my grandfather's presence strongly. You were right, Grandpa, I whispered to myself as cameras flashed. My healing hands did matter. As my professional confidence grew, so did my personal support network. The staff who had stood by me during the family crisis became more than colleagues, they became my chosen family. We celebrated birthdays and achievements together, supported each other through difficulties, and built bonds based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I reconnected with my grandfather's sister, Aunt Dorothy, who had always been somewhat estranged from my father. At 82, she was still sharp and insightful. Your grandfather would be bursting with pride, she told me over tea in her small apartment filled with plants and books. He always said you had a special gift. Robert was jealous of that, you know. His own father saw something in you that he didn't see in him. This perspective helped me understand my father's dismissal of my healthcare ambitions in a new light. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me process it with more compassion. In a strange twist of fate, I encountered my family members occasionally in public settings. At a Chamber of Commerce event, Rebecca and I found ourselves at the same table. The conversation was stiffly polite, with no mention of the clinic or our falling out. I learned that she had taken a corporate marketing position and moved to a neighboring city with Michael. James was less successful in his transition. Through business community gossip, I heard he had cycled through 3 more positions, unable to maintain the executive role he felt entitled to. When we passed each other at the grocery store, he pretended not to see me. My parents were the most difficult. My mother sent occasional texts on holidays, acting as if nothing had happened. My father maintained his silence. I responded to my mother with brief, polite messages, neither encouraging reconciliation nor completely cutting contact. Dr. Washington had helped me understand that I could set boundaries without burning bridges entirely. As the second year after the confrontation approached, I received an unexpected letter from my father. Handwritten on his personal stationery, it was brief but significant. Sophia, I saw your clinic's new rehabilitation program featured in the medical journal. Impressive work. Your grandfather would have been proud. Dad. It wasn't an apology, but from my father, it was an unprecedented acknowledgement. I chose not to respond immediately, giving myself time to process this small olive branch without rushing into reconciliation. The true measure of my healing came when a young physical therapist named Alicia applied for a position at my clinic. During her interview, she confessed that she had started her own small practice but had been pressured by family to give up control. They mean well, she explained, but they don't understand my vision for patient care. They just see dollar signs. 2 years earlier, I might have projected my own family issues onto her situation. Instead, I listened carefully to the specifics of her circumstance, recognizing that every family dynamic is unique. Only you can decide what boundaries are right for you, I told her. But know that your worth isn't determined by their approval of your choices. As my clinics continued to grow and thrive, I sometimes reflected on the irony of the situation. By refusing to give my family control, I had actually built something far more successful than what they had envisioned. My patient-centered approach, the very thing they had wanted to streamline, had become our greatest market advantage in an increasingly corporate healthcare landscape. Our unique care model attracted attention from healthcare innovators nationwide. I was invited to consult with larger hospital systems looking to improve patient satisfaction. Medical schools requested internship partnerships. Insurance companies sought our input on outcome-based reimbursement models. The clinic that my family had once dismissed as my little therapy place was now recognized as a pioneer in its field. And it had all happened because I had trusted my own vision over their limited perception of my capabilities. Perhaps the most profound lesson I learned through this journey was about the true nature of family. Blood relationships give us our beginning, but they don't have to define our entire story. The family I created around me, colleagues who shared my values, patients who trusted my care, mentors who believed in my vision, proved more nurturing and supportive than the one I was born into. 7 years after opening my first clinic, I stood on the stage at the National Healthcare Innovation Conference, accepting an award for our community care model. Looking out at the audience, I saw my staff members cheering, several patients who had traveled to support me, and colleagues who had become friends. I didn't see my biological family in the crowd, and that was okay. My worth was no longer tied to their validation. I had built something meaningful entirely on my own terms. As I hold this microphone today sharing my story with you, I want to ask, have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people close to you to protect something you've built? How did you find the courage to stand your ground? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in my story, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more conversations about building businesses with integrity and purpose. Remember, sometimes the most important thing you can do is believe in your own vision, even when, especially when, those closest to you don't. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the strength to create the life and work that truly fulfills you.